Please. I want to welcome everyone. We have a fantastic program today, so these luncheons are great grip and grin opportunities, and I'm delighted everyone is here. This is going to be our program on the business of sports, staying ahead of the game. And I am Patrick Oxford. I'm pleased to say that I am your chairman of the board for the Greater Houston Partnership this year. And we're honored to have such a powerhouse of sports business professionals with us today. They're going to give us some insights. We're looking forward to getting them and to discuss how sports and the business of sports are, how related they are to our economy. I have a stat here in my prepared comments that points out that our professional sports franchises represented here today have a combined estimated worth of over $2 billion. And it's the Houston economy and the quality of life they provide us that benefits from these folks' work in developing that net worth of these companies, these businesses, these teams. And beside that, of course, everyone in our region holds these teams closely to our heart. It's even more than the economic impact. They're the ambassadors for our region all over the United States and sometimes around the world. And each game these teams play enhances our reputation. I want to say that I'm an old-timer in terms of the role that sports play in our lives. The old Grantland Rice, I believe it was, poem that ended, when the one great scorer comes to mark your name, it's not whether you won or lost, but how you played the game. Many people who follow sports still agree with me on that. And the people we have here today, when we see them with all the microphones stuck in front of their face and what they say, they totally represent that approach, that what they're doing to each of them is more than a business. It's an opportunity to project an image not only of their team but our region, and they do everything they can to make sure their teams project the kind of image we want Houston to have. And we value their presence and their ongoing commitment to elevate our community in that way. In that same context of business community, I want to introduce some of our special guests. I want to start off by recognizing Skip Wagner, who's President and CEO of the Houston Livestock Show. That's the world's largest rodeo. Skip, where are you? There you go. I've heard Skip and his predecessors refer to our show as it's like having a couple of weeks of Super Bowls in a row here. Well, that may stretch it a bit, but if you're like me, a livestock show and rodeo fan, they do a wonderful job for us every night when they're on, and they do a lot of things for us, of course, when the show is not on. We also have Kenny Friedman, chairman of the board of the Harris County Sports Authority. Where are you, Kenny? Thank you for being here. All of us will be talking to you about other little additions and corrections we want to our various arenas. I hope you'll hang around and talk to us. And then we have Andre Young, who's the president and COO of the Sam Houston Race Park, which brings the sport of kings to our region. Thank you so much. And we're looking forward to your program for us today, and we're going to have lunch now, and we'll continue with our business after lunch. Thanks.
Enjoy your lunch. I want to thank you for being here for the Greater Houston Partnership's Business of Sports Luncheon. We have a fantastic program for you today. My name is Jamie Roots, and I'm president with the Houston Texans. I'm also a proud member of the Greater Houston Partnership as an organization and a member of the board and the executive committee for the Greater Houston Partnership. And the Greater Houston Partnership does such fantastic work for our community, within our community. I'd like to recognize some of the folks who are the leaders within the Greater Houston Partnership. You heard earlier from our chairman, Pat Oxford, but I'd like to recognize him and our vice chairman, Larry Kellner, and all other Greater Houston Partnership board members that are here with us today. If you could please stand and be recognized with a round of applause. Thank you, Bob, Don, Dan. Thank you for all the good work you do in our community. We're also honored today to have a number of elected officials and members of the Consular Corps, and I'd like to introduce them right now. First off, Michelle Mosbacher, who's Honorary Consulate of the Republic of Iceland. Welcome. Good to have you with us. Mike Sullivan, a good friend and council member from District E, the city of Houston. Good to see you. Another good friend, James Rodriguez, City Council, District 1 from the city of Houston. James, thank you for being here. And Beverly Kaufman, who's the Harris County Clerk from Harris County. You know, being in the business of sports, nothing great happens for our fans and in our community and on the field without fantastic sponsors. And today we've got some very generous sponsors. Our friends from Silver Eagle Distributors, Jones Lang LaSalle Americas, Northwestern Mutual Financial Network, Pennell Kerr Forster, better known as PKF around here, Texas PC, and Skanska USA Building. Please give them a round of applause. Thank you for your support. Johnny, thank you. Okay, we're going to have a bunch of great questions of a fantastic panel. I'm just amazed at the individuals that have agreed to come and be part of this. It's really a rare opportunity to be able to ask and have answered important questions for sports. But I want to start with a question for you. Think about it. Over the past 10 years, which community in America has hosted the Super Bowl, the NBA All-Star Game, the MLB All-Star Game, the World Series, and most recently the MLS All-Star Game, which, by the way, is the fourth largest All-Star game in sports history in America? Which community is that? Houston. There's one community that can do it. And Houston deserves a round of applause for that, because we are a big-time sports town, and today is a great opportunity for us to recognize and celebrate the great sports history, the great sports present, and the great sports future for our community, because it provides tremendous economic impact. It's a great way to market our community on a national and international scale. It's a great opportunity for quality of life, all kinds of benefits that inure from sports in our community. And there's somebody who's been an integral part of the Houston Texans and sports in our community for the last decade as well. You hear him morning drive on our partner, Sports Radio 610, CBS Radio here in Houston. You also hear him on Sundays during the fall. He's the voice of your Houston Texans, Mr. Mark Vandermeer, and he's going to be our moderator today. Mark?
I'll go up, shall we? This is the grand entrance for everybody up here, so I want to welcome up our panelists. Somebody stopped me on the way in and said it reminded them of a scene from The Godfather. It's a meeting of the four families. Here we are today, Astros, Dynamo, of course the Rockets and the Texans. As we all take a seat here. Well, good afternoon once again, and welcome to our business sports panel. Let's introduce our panelists. Now, to my right, far right, let's introduce the chairman of the Houston Astros. You know him well, Mr. Drayton McClain. To my immediate right, the president and CEO of AEG, co-owner of the Houston Dynamo, and a lot of other things, Mr. Timothy Lewicki. This man, unmistakable, right? Hall of Famer, NBA champion, Rocket great, Cougar great, Clyde the Glide Drexler. And the man who brought professional football back to the city of Houston. We are all grateful for that. The CEO, founder, and chairman of the Houston Texans, Mr. Bob McNair. Thank you for being with us today, gentlemen. All right, let's start with a mini State of the Union address, if you will, on the franchises here. We'll start with Mr. McClain, 17 years owning the Astros, your organization. Give us a snapshot of how things are now. We know you have the youth movement going on and what you expect in the future.
Well, this is the 18th year that our family has been involved with the Houston Astros, and it has been a wonderful, delightful experience for our family. and to have been involved, and particularly to have been involved in Houston. I like, Mark, the name you had here, sports business. A lot of times athletes and fans think it's totally a sport. And one time I was negotiating with Jeff Bagwell and Craig Biggio, and they kept saying how much money they wanted, and I kept saying, well, this is really a business, and we've got to fit it all together. And they said, oh, no, this is a sport. Well, it is a sport, but to have a healthy team and organization, you have to put it all together. It is a business, and the support you get from businesses that you all represent here are so important to our organizations and into the fan base we have. That's what makes this all work. And I just want to thank all of you for being involved and encouraging us all. Houston is a great city. I talked to other owners at Major League owners meetings. They're very envious of what we have here in Houston. The vastness of Texas, the teams that we have here, the good economy, but they really love the attitude of people that live in this part of the country. So I think that's one of the greatest assets of the Houston Astros and all of our teams is the support and the attitude that we have. Baseball goes in cycles, and you get young athletes. When I bought the Houston Astros, they were just getting into a youth movement. In 1993, the first year we owned the team, when we started the season with 25 players, 14 of them, that was their first year. They were rookies that year. And you remember a lot of them, and it really, Craig Biggio and Jeff Bagwell were part of that group. They were young and moved forward. Jeff played 17 years for the Astros, and Craig Biggio played 20 years. Hard to believe, but their cycle moved out. Then we had another group of players that came in. They're kind of moving out, and we have a group of new players. 2 nights ago when we were playing in Florida, our entire infield, starting with the catcher and going all the way around to the third base and the pitcher, were all younger than 25 years of age, and all of them were rookies. So you've got to constantly bring young players in, new players in, and you have to invest in this. A little different than basketball or football, where they can graduate from college and then they're a star the next year. The average player, when he comes out of high school or college, plays in the minor league for 5.5 years. So the progress of getting, and when we draft them, we've done all kind of research on them and spent millions and millions trying to select these young people, and only 17% of them ever play in the major leagues 1 year. Only 8% ever play in the major leagues 3 years, and only 0.5% have a significant career. So it's a tough weeding out process, and that's kind of where we are. We're mixing some experienced players with some young players. And so we're very excited where we are today, the young players we have in our minor league system, and what the future holds for the Houston Astros. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. Now, Timothy Lewicki, AEG, tell us what else the company has besides the Dynamo, because I know there are a lot of different interests for AEG, but a lot of exciting things happening with the Houston Dynamo. Jamie mentioned the MLS All-Star Game, the great crowd at Reliance Stadium, plus a new stadium in the works here in Houston.
Well, thanks. We're honored to be part of the community here. When we first came here, Mayor White said, how would you like to get involved in football in Houston? And we were confused. We thought it was the Texans. Soccer has really been amazing in its growth in Houston. Our company's involved in a lot of different things. You know that we're involved in the Lakers. Sorry about that. We won a few championships there. We have an ice hockey team in the LA Kings. We own the LA Galaxy. We actually own 10 teams around the world. But for us, the next great challenge is here in Houston. We moved the team believing that we would get a stadium built here eventually, and now we're on the verge of getting that done. It's a unique time and age when you try to get these sports facilities built today. We have other priorities as a community. We have our education, we have our safety, we have our roads, and we have jobs. And so we have forged a partnership with the County of Harris and the City of Houston, and the Sports Commission has been fantastic. We have figured out a way to economically make a stadium model work. We have designed the stadium. We've hired Icon to manage it for us. We just got all the bids in from the contractors last week, and we will be under construction by the end of this year. And it'll be an urban stadium right next to the ballpark. We've had great cooperation from the other teams. They've encouraged us. In some cases, they've also committed to help us on scheduling and parking. And so our goal here is to be playing in a new stadium for Houston in May of 2012. The league is growing leaps and bounds. When we first started, we owned 6 of the 10 teams. I'm proud that we're down to 1.5. And we have great partners in Gabriel Brenner and Oscar De La Hoya for the Houston team. I also want to let everyone know that we have a unique offering. You know, usually when you have a celebrity like Oscar De La Hoya, what you say is, well, if you buy the naming rights or a sponsorship, you get to go spend a night with Oscar. What we're doing is if you don't buy a suite, we're going to put you in the ring with Oscar. So be aware he will be here soon to fulfill that commitment. But we will be playing in May of 2012. And I expect by the time we do play here, the league will be to 24 teams. Our teams have all quadrupled in value. When we first started this league, teams went for $5 million. Now expansion teams are going for $50 million, and existing teams are going for $100 million. So we all see the growth of soccer. The Texans and Jamie have been great at partnering with us on the international games. We were awed by the support that we had for the MLS All-Star Game. So we are a company that is fortunate to be involved in a wide variety of sports. But clearly our focus now is Houston. We see it as one of the great cities in the country, and we see it as the future of soccer in this country. And we expect to join the ranks of the other teams by having a new facility by 2012.
All right, thank you. Now, it's hard to imagine a more decorated basketball player than Clyde Drexler, who's basically the anti-LeBron, okay? He came home to win a championship. Played high school ball here, of course, college ball, Phi Slamma Jamma, and Hall of Famer. Well, Clyde, you do the color commentary for the games. You were an assistant GM with the Denver Nuggets once upon a time. Give us the state of the Rockets right now. You won a championship. We know that the franchise in win total dipped down a little bit, but now a lot of exciting things happening. And at this hour, Yao Ming is announcing that he's been cleared to practice, participate fully in training camp. That's exciting as well.
Well, that's really exciting, and I am delighted to be here, Mark. First of all, I want to say I'm representing Les Alexander, Rocket owner, who couldn't be with us today. And it's a difficult task when you're up here with these titans to try to represent them. But, you know, one of the things I love about these guys is that we have great sports owners in our city. From the Texans, the Dynamos, the Rockets, the Astros, phenomenal people who are also leaders in our community, which in my opinion makes them even more special. And I am, you know, as a guy who grew up in the city of Houston, it's a wonderful thing to have. When you have sports franchises that really care not only about winning, but also care about helping their community, it's a beautiful thing to behold. And being in the sports world for so many years, obviously, it's very refreshing. It's one of those things that make you feel good deep inside. Houston has been a phenomenal sports town for many, many years. I think this next fall we're hosting, next spring, we're also hosting the Final Four. So it gets even better. And so there are a lot of things going on. But I am delighted to be here on the panel. As you mentioned, Yao Ming is going to be cleared for basketball-related activities. I think I talked to Rockets CEO Tad Brown, who's also in attendance, and we were discussing that he's been cleared as of today. So that's good for our fans, that's good for our partners, and we look forward to now competing again for a title. It's about time.
Okay, Clyde Drexler. Now, Clyde said he's up here with these titans, and I know that Mr. McNair was thinking, can we use a different word, please? But it's been well over a decade since your pursuit of an NFL franchise, Mr. McNair, to come here to Houston. Take us through a little bit of your vision for the franchise entering year 9.
Well, it's hard to believe that we've had 8 years of football seasons already have come and gone, and to look back on it, it's almost like it's just one flash. And we look at folks, like Tim and his organization out working to get a stadium and other places around the country. We know what's involved there, and to think that we were able to get the stadium that we have that takes care of us and takes care of the rodeo and such an asset to this community, and to look at the great value that it represents in terms of cost versus what it costs to build these facilities now. I'm just thankful that we were able to do it when we did. And then, of course, the support that we've had throughout the community has just been fabulous, and we can't thank you enough for that. This will be the 9th year that we've sold out. And we have over 64,000 season tickets that we've sold, thanks to Jamie and his group that do a wonderful job. And the support that we've had throughout the community has just been consistent through the ups and downs. And as with anything, when we started out, I was the employee. There was no one else. And then to build the organization and to put it together, and we had to make a few changes as we went along the way. I think that we have an organization in place that is quite competent. I have a lot of confidence in them. The business side, Jamie and his people do a great job. I think our general manager, Rick Smith, is very talented in terms of finding talent, which is really the key ingredient. He has to do a lot of other things, but what really counts is, can he recognize talent? And he does a good job of that. And Gary Kubiak, I think, is a fine young coach. He has a great rapport with the players. He has a great feel for when to push harder and when to back off a little bit. And Clyde, you know how important that is. And some people have that and some people don't. But Gary does have that. And I think that last year we came very close to making the playoffs. I really thought we would make it. And we came very close, but we were very competitive. And at the end of the year, we were playing as well as anyone. And this year, we've got to start off the season. We've got the first 4 games are going to be very difficult games for us. But in the NFL, they're all tough. I mean, there are no easy games. Any team you play can beat you if you don't play your best. And so we've got to start off strong, and I think that we'll be ready to do that. And our expectation is that we're going to be in the playoffs. That's what we fully expect. And we'll have to see how things develop, and what happens in terms of how healthy we are and how healthy our opponents are. You never know what that situation will be until you get to game time. But I like the composition of our team. I think with any team, you've got to have a great quarterback if you expect to be a winner. People don't realize how good our quarterback is. Matt Schaub is an outstanding quarterback, and you'll see that as we go through this season and the following years. We have a great wide receiver in Andre Johnson, who is probably the best in the league. We've got a young offensive line that needs to come together. Owen Daniel has been out with an injury, but we think he's going to be back in time for the start, and that'll help us. And then on defense, we're very, very young, and we've just got some great players there that are really outstanding players in the NFL. D'Amico Ryans and Brian Cushing and Mario, and then we've got Pollard that we picked up last year. Strong safety. So it's an exciting group of young players. We're one of the youngest teams, like you, Drayton. Really, our team's one of the youngest in the NFL. And I think we've got a lot of exciting years in front of us. And I think last year, of our 16 games, 15 games were thrillers down to the end. There was one game, our first game, where we just didn't play well. Other than that, all 15 of the remaining games, we had a chance to win. And that's where we want to be. My philosophy has always been that I don't expect to win every game, but I want to be in the position to win. And as long as we're in the position to win, things will fall our way often enough that we'll win more than our share. And that's what I tell our coaches and everyone else. And that's what we expect. And I think we're there. We still have work to be done, and we can still be better than we are. And every day we have to go out and work hard to get better. And I'm looking forward to the year, and I thank you very much for the great support that this city has given to the Texans. It's just been unbelievable, and we're going to participate in a little payback. So thank you very much.
All right, now some sports business questions. We'll start with Mr. McClain. And what has been the most challenging thing about running your franchise during the current economic climate? Because it's hit everybody in the last couple of years. Your thoughts?
One of the difficulties in Major League Baseball, unfortunately, started this many years ago. They give multi-year contracts. These contracts are guaranteed. And when the economy was really zipping and was doing well, in the late 90s and early part of 2000, we were extending contracts for 4 and 6 and 8 years. Then when the economy certainly went down just 2 years ago, you were still paying at this level, and the economy and the revenues dipped down some. So that's been the single biggest challenge, is adjusting. It just takes years. You have to work through these contracts through difficult times. Then other ideas, we're a little different in the sport. We play 162 games in a year, and we have 81 home games. And so to motivate people and to get them to come, we've had to really be creative and imaginative during economic times. So we've had to work programs to help our fans afford the tickets and do promotions of various kinds. Years ago, we had one price for each level of seat. Now we have multiple prices and promotions and activities. So we've tried to work with our fans and provide economic programs and discounts to work along with it. And with a fixed salary, that's a challenge, but that's part of the sport. You just have to work through it.
Okay, Mr. Lewicki, your thoughts on the same subject?
Well, I think the telling piece for us, because we experience sports across a wide variety of different leagues, is every league is involved in a collective bargaining agreement negotiation right now. And it's the only time I could remember in my 30 years in sports where we have this unique timing. Everyone is aware of the NFL and the collective bargaining agreement that expires in a year there, and certainly basketball has already begun negotiations for a new collective bargaining agreement. In Major League Soccer, we are thankful that we just resolved our collective bargaining agreement. And even though we're really a fledgling league, when you compare ourselves to the other big boys, we almost had a work stoppage. And then in the National Hockey League, we are the poster boys for, I'm probably going to get heat from our commissioner for saying this, but the current collective bargaining agreement, which we almost gave up, we gave up an entire year for, and it doesn't work. And so the majority of teams in a lot of these sports are not making money. And some of that is we want to be competitive. We're willing to spend a lot of money, and we always think we're one player away from the ring. That's a real bad disease to get, by the way. That one
it works
player
in
away
every
from the
sport
ring.
that way.
Yeah. I didn't know what they were talking about was marriage, not a championship ring. But anyway, that's the great challenge, is trying to make sure we don't get to a point where we are now marketing ourselves to 10 or 20% of the marketplace because the other 80 or 90% can't afford our tickets. And that is a cooperative partnership between the players and the owners. The players look at the owners and think they're making money and hiding the ball, and the owners look at the players and think maybe they're making too much money. I think straight across the board in every sport now, it's amazing when we look at baseball and they have the relative peace and quiet and harmony between the players and the owners when compared to the rest of the sports. That's a real turn from where it was 10 years ago or 5 years ago. So there are real challenges. The NFL's first up. The NBA doesn't look real good right now, and so there's real struggles. The NHL follows in 2012.
So does Major League Baseball.
And so does Major League Baseball.
In 2012.
So this is going to be a remarkable time in the history of professional sports. We've never had all of the major leagues come up at the same time like we have right now, and everyone's watching to see what happens, because I think across the board we all have to be aware of the fact that we are so expensive that we price so many people out of participating in the live experience of our sports.
All right, thank you. And on the NHL comment, Commissioner Gary Bettman will not find out what he said, right, everybody? Ziploc mouths on that one. It's an off-the-record meeting. Clyde, while we're on the subject, NBA collective bargaining and being a player and also later in your career an assistant GM, you really have some insight into this sort of thing.
Well, if I was Les Alexander sitting here, I'm sure he'd have a different opinion. But the CBA it's a necessary agreement because you got to have labor laws. Obviously, it doesn't seem fair. Drayton, you mentioned that when times were good, salaries were guaranteed, but that doesn't change when the economic turns around. But there should always be something in place where that does happen, where you make corrections. And that's why in basketball, we have something called the defined gross revenues. The players always get a certain percentage of the defined gross revenues of the teams. And so if it goes down, then you don't get as much. And so those are the things that you fight about in a collective bargaining agreement. And hopefully, in the interest of all sports fans, of the participants, the owners, the people who make the investments in these sports franchises, that what you always want to do is come to some middle ground and something that's fair for every party. And you'd almost think that, well, if baseball has a great collective bargaining agreement, why don't the other sports just follow what they do? Well, there's different dynamics. It's hard to do that.
All right. And on the economic question, you sit in the seat doing television color commentary. Last year was a difficult year for the Rockets in the sense that they didn't have Yao Ming, yet still had a winning season and a lot of support at the gate during a so-called tough economic time. Your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you got to give the fans here in Houston a lot of credit for that. They really supported the team, even in the absence of their best player, Yao Ming, who was crippled with injuries for the most part the whole year and a half. This city supported him, but guys like Louis Scola stepped it up. Shane Battier is always there. Guys like Aaron Brooks had a breakout season. We had some young guys like Trevor Ariza, Kyle Lowry, Chase Budinger. All those guys stepped up, and they'll be back with the exception of Ariza. And so with Yao Ming back, who's going to be the aircraft carrier if we're going to win a championship, right? Well, I think their chances for next year are incredibly good because all of those guys who got the benefit of playing and the experience of playing without Yao Ming, their game is a lot better. Now with Yao Ming back on the floor, these guys are going to take off, and I really believe the sky is the limit.
All right, and Mr. McNair, the Texans have sold out every game in team history, yet, like we mentioned, last couple of years have not been the best economically. Reflect on that for us.
Well, in terms of the differences, first of all, between the sports business and other businesses that we have, one of the things that you'll find of interest, the organizations that we work for, typically, our ultimate responsibility is to the shareholders. That's the ultimate responsibility of the officers of the corporation and the board. And in the process of taking care of the shareholders, you have to take care of the employees. But that's the progression. You don't just go out and do everything that's in the best interest of the employee first, and then you worry about the shareholder. If you did that, we'd all be out of business probably. Yet, to some extent, that's what happens in sports, in that the players, of course, are interested in their situation, and they have no interest in the ownership or the organization as such, other than as an organization they want to win. And then the coaches, their desire is to go out and put the best team they can on the field, and they're like Drayton or Tim saying, all we need is one more player. And the only consideration is, how can I get another player, to beef up the talent that I've got? No consideration to what the impact is on the bottom line for the organization. And so you wind up in a situation in which you're sort of on an island. You're the only person that is sort of protecting the organization. And yet if the organization is not strong, you're not going to be competitive long term because you're not going to be able to attract the players. You're not going to be able to attract the coaches. So you have this tension there where you really have to walk that fine line where you want to get the best players you possibly can, but at the same time, you've got to look at it in terms of value. How do I get the most value? Because most of us in football spend about the same amount of money. So if we go out and put all of our money on 3 or 4 players, then you don't have much money for the rest of the team. And so you're just shifting the dollars around to some extent. So the media, of course, wants you to sign every player that comes along and to pay them whatever they want, and don't raise the ticket prices. But ultimately, you know, the cost of it comes back, and the fans and the sponsors pick up the bill. And so my concern is, you know, at what point do we price ourselves out of business? Because we can do that, and we all lose if we do that. So I think that we really have to pay a lot of attention. The fan is the ultimate customer for us, and we have to pay attention. We know that the fan wants to win, and I know they want us to just use all of our resources to do that. But at the same time, the fan has to be able to afford the product that we're putting out there. And if we push too hard on it, we're going to be selling to that 10 or 20% of the population and attracting that part of the population instead of, you know, the 100% that we all want. So we try to pay attention to that and try to listen to what our fans are saying and try to be sensitive to it. And at the same time, you know, we really don't want to hold back. But during this recent downturn, it was a real challenge because a lot of the corporations were receiving criticism for anything that they did in terms of spending, in terms of promotion. You know, even to have an event, a sales conference, away from the headquarters, you know, they'd get criticism if they went someplace, some resort or what have you for 3 days, or if they rewarded the sales force. So that was something that we had to overcome, and fortunately we have many long-term contracts in terms of sponsorships. And you know, the network business is picking up, advertising is picking up a little bit now, but you know, long term, that's a challenge. The networks have been a major source of revenue for the NFL, and you know, if the network, if their presence is diminished long term, then where is this revenue going to come from to support our operations at the level that we've operated at? And you know, they have to look at value. The networks do. So we're in an interactive age and a digital age, and where it's going to take us, we don't know, but it is challenging, and we really have to walk that fine line.
Okay, Mr. McLean, can you comment on some of the things Mr. McNair said and how they apply to baseball, because it is a different world?
Well, baseball operates a little different than the other 3 leagues. Unfortunately, we do not have a salary control system. There is disparity. The New York Yankee baseball team is a $245 million baseball team, and then there's some teams like Pittsburgh or Florida or some of those others that are a $40 million team. So there's great disparity between the teams. The Houston Astros are a $93 million baseball team. But Bob hit upon a key point. It's how you select the talent that's on the field. The scouting, the player development, the leadership that goes into it. And it's no different than any other business. I love entrepreneurs, and an entrepreneur can go out with a great idea, a good business plan, and his ability, and be successful against big corporations. And that's what we have to do against other baseball teams. So the sport is somewhat different. That's where the new collective bargaining system we hope to have going past 2012 can be somewhat different. But baseball is different because of the guaranteed salaries and the unlimited spending that teams can do. But I think the key point that each was mentioning, we have to make it affordable for the fans. Each one of you talked about that. And the players will take all the money we hand them. We have to show restraint and leadership to make the game affordable. And we continue to do this, and we work on that very much with us. Our average ticket price is $24. So we have a number of games that we're able to hold the ticket price down and make it affordable where fans can come and have the experience. It's a economic challenge, but it's fun.
I have a question for our audience now. How many of you in your businesses use social networking, Twitter, and or Facebook to market yourselves? Anybody? All right, that's quite a few hands. All right, question about new media, technology, how it applies to your particular sport. And we'll start with you again, Mr. McClellan.
Well, we recognized that several years ago, 3 years ago, and we have a department in our marketing, our media communications, and they work just in social media and putting information out about the Astros. But more than that, responding. It is a great network for the public to communicate with us, to ask us questions and immediately respond to them on an individual basis. I think this will grow even faster than it has just in the last 2 to 3 years.
Mr. Lewicki.
Well, I'll give one specific example. I think the challenge for all of us is to use technology to improve the customer experience. And so we're within all of our teams across the world. Our number one priority is to take control of ticketing and bring it back in-house, because we want it's terrible what we make people go through to buy tickets with surcharges and a bad system. And you would think technology would improve the experience. If you think about the way we treat customers through our ticketing system, and we use Ticketmaster, and they know I'm not a big fan. When you, and in particular, they will know after I make this next statement probably. When you look at the surcharge we put upon tickets, and the things we make you go do to buy concert tickets, for example, it's absolutely ludicrous. And there's no wonder that industry is in a bit of an uproar now, because people are fighting back and they're saying, I've had it. I don't want to pay $20, $30 to ultimately have a surcharge on top of the $225 I got to go pay to see the band. And so I think technology can be used to make the customer's experience better. And in addition to social networking and marketing, I think we are going to pay a lot of attention to how we use technology to have a direct one-on-one relationship with our fans and allow them the ability to have a pipeline back to the team without having to go through third parties who don't have any skin in the game and yet are making probably more money than most of the teams. And in our case, for arenas, if you look at Ticketmaster, they make more money than most NBA and NHL teams because of the surcharge. Well, we shouldn't be doing that to the fans. So we have to use technology to make the fan experience better. Obviously, this is not the headquarter town for Ticketmaster, as we just saw.
Clyde, are you on Twitter? Do you tweet?
I do not tweet, nor do I Facebook or MySpace.
But I know the Rockets do as an organization, though.
Absolutely.
Jason Friedman and others. The Rockets do use social media and obviously the website to reach out to people.
Absolutely. More so for the fans, because they always want to have that give and take. You want to hear what they have to say to improve their experience, but also for their partners, to keep in touch and let them know that everything they're experiencing is what they thought they would get. And so it works out best for both parties. But I think, as Drayton said, it's going to get even more intense in the next 2 or 3 years, because we're only scratching the surface of what a social media can do for professional franchises. People now have a voice, and they can write in their little comments, and you get it back right away, and you can respond, just like Drayton said. So that's invaluable as a franchise owner.
Mr. McNair, your thoughts on the subject?
Hold up, I got one more thing to say.
Sorry.
Mark, cut it out. Drayton, I got a question. When I was a kid, I could go to an Astro game. I could ride my bicycle. I grew up about 10 minutes away, and I could buy a 50-cent ticket to sit in the center field bleachers any home game. And I could do it the day of the game. So me and my buddies, we never missed a game. What can we do to kind of, like, kids today cannot do that. I don't think they would, even if they could. They wouldn't have the security or the freedom to do it. But what can be done to kind of create that kind of environment?
Well, if you'll factor in the economy going up in inflation, but we have about 6,000 seats that we sell for $10, and that's for an adult. He can bring 4 children with him for $1. So we've only advanced it 50 cents over your day. And if we put inflation in there, I think you might say, boy, that's a bargain. But an adult can come for $10 and bring a child with him for $1.
It's a Good deal. Great deal. All right, Mr. McNair, on social media, internet.
Well, we do try to take advantage of the digital tools that are available, and especially in terms of the interactive ability that you have. And I think that what we try to do is any inquiry that we get, any comment that asks for a reply, I think within 24 hours, our standard is we want to reply to that person within 24 hours. And we couldn't do it, without this interactive ability that we have. We did have to modify things a little bit, though, with Twitter. We had a couple of cases of players doing that in the locker room, right after the coaches or somebody said something. And that wasn't exactly in our best interest, and so we've abolished them out of our locker room. But it's a great way for fans to interact with the players, and we do encourage that, and we find that the fan feels a sense of importance if they can communicate with the organization and immediately get a response. They feel like, hey, they're listening, they're paying attention to me, and it really strengthens that attachment to the organization, and so we think it's very useful.
All right, here's a question about the international and diverse nature of our city with so many ethnic groups and whatnot. How do you market to different groups of people throughout the city? Drayton McLean.
Well, that's the challenge in Houston, and I think that's the uniqueness and the great part of Houston. This is one of the most diverse cities in America, and I think it's a great part of our city. Baseball is not a world sport. It was started here in the United States. Major League Baseball is in its 147th year, but it was started in America, and then as America had influence, it went to Japan, Korea, Indonesia, Central America, and then particularly in the Caribbean, it was an instrumental sport. We're trying to get it established around the world. Major League Baseball has offices in London and in Frankfurt and Sydney, and places all over the world, so they're trying to establish it. We're trying to really get different people, as we've had Japanese players here, we've had players from a great deal of the world here, and we're trying to market to those particular individuals and those groups of people. And it gets to be a challenge at times because there's different newspapers, radio, TV stations, and the communication. So we really accept that. We have people within our marketing department that specialize in various groups of people, trying to take our programs to them and make it relate very strongly to them.
Same question?
Two-edged sword for Major League Soccer and Chris and the guys here that fight this battle every day. On one hand, we're probably the most international of all of the sports up here, but we also had to compete internationally for talent. So when you have this is probably going to put you into a cringe situation, but you got a club like Manchester City in the Premier League that just spent $150 million in a month on transfer fees and salaries. And that's who we had to compete with to find players.
And that's not even Manchester United. That's Manchester
not even Manchester
City. United.
That's
wow.
Manchester City. And so we want to be an international roster and an international squad. When you have a salary cap of $3 million and you got guys spending $150 million, I'm sure you can do the math. So we tend not to win a lot of those bids. So what we had to do is we had to find young kids and young talent. But we have a new thing called designated player. And we've used it with some of our teams. The Red Bulls have brought in Thierry Henry and Marquez, the captain of the Mexican national team. The Galaxy have David Beckham. Yes, he does still play. And Landon Donovan. And we need one of those in Houston. And chances are pretty good that at least one, if not two, of these designated players in Houston will be from the Hispanic community, because that is the future of our sport. So the good news for Major League Soccer is we have something all the other leagues would love to have, which is we are truly an international sport and a global sport, as we just saw during the World Cup. The bad news is it is the only sport out of all the major leagues in the United States where the best players are not playing in the United States. And that's going to have to change over a period of time, because in the U.S., especially if you look at the Mexican fans, They look at our league, and we don't have as much respect as we should yet because they don't think we're as good as the Mexican league. That's changing. The Dynamo have probably won more games than they lost against the friendlies and Superliga. But eventually where we have to go is we have to have some of the greatest players in the world playing here, or else we're going to have a hard time trying to justify and relate to our Hispanic Latino audience that we, in fact, could play with the best clubs in the world.
I know Clyde's over here saying, wait a minute, we have an international sport. Okay, we have Yao Ming, we have Luis Scola, we've had others here. Basketball is highly international, but as opposed to MLS, like you said, the best players tend to play in the United States of America.
Yes, they do, and it's a great thing. We have about 84, 85 international players playing in the NBA. Now, keep in mind, there are only about 400, 450 jobs every year, and a lot of those don't change hands. Like, Yao Ming's going to make it every year. Luis Scola's going to make it every year. So only about 60 to 70 jobs change hands each and every year. So they say you got a better chance of becoming an astronaut than you do of making an NBA team. And so the odds are really low. But for the most part, our international players have really made our game a lot more global. The NBA under David Stern has done a great job of promoting the game around the country. And so the Basketball Without Borders concept is truly alive today because of that. And all of this really started in the sport of basketball when the Dream Team started the '92 Olympics. That was the original Dream Team, the greatest team ever assembled.
Familiar with your work? Yes. Recently inducted into the Basketball Hall of Fame.
Recently inducted. I wasn't going to say it, but since you mentioned it, a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But the international flavor has really enhanced our game. And a lot of those guys got their start by watching that Dream Team, and that was their motivation. And so to have these guys, when you have a professional league, you truly want to say that these are the greatest players in the world playing in our league on a nightly basis. So all of these great talents that come to the city of Houston, they're the best in the world. And that's what makes our game so special.
And the Rockets do a great job of marketing to all ethnic groups in the city. Luis Scola, for instance, does a weekly appearance on Mega 101, Spanish-speaking station, CBS Radio. That's among the many things they do to market. Mr. McNair, what about marketing? I know you have the Spanish-speaking play-by-play broadcast with Rolando Becerra, La Tremenda, yes, and other efforts are out there as well involving
yes,
Texans.
and we have people in our organization who really market in the Hispanic community. The big challenge that we have is that it's difficult for us to go abroad and play because typically we play like once a week. We can't go out and play 3 or 4 games in a week and come back. And many of the places that we go have not had American football. So it's a brand new experience for them. It's been very successful in England, the games we've had there in London, and we've had very successful games in Mexico City. And probably you're going to see England and Mexico and Canada as being the 3 areas that we'll probably be more active in. It's just from a logistical standpoint. We used to play in Japan, but it is just so difficult, to make that long trip and scheduling and what have you. And then we only have 10 home games, 2 of which are preseason. So when we play an international game, like if the Texans go to Mexico City under the existing schedule, if it's regular season, we're losing a home game here. And so our sponsors, our fans here in Houston are not real pleased with that. But if we look to an expanded schedule or a rearrangement of our schedule where perhaps we'll play 18 regular season games, 2 preseason games, that would then give us the opportunity to have an international game without taking anything away from our hometown base. So those are some of the things that we're working on, and I think the big challenge and the difficulty that we have in spreading the popularity of the sport is that in the case of soccer, they can get a soccer ball and then go out and play. They can play in China or Asia or wherever it might be. They don't have to have all of the equipment and the field that we have to have. And so that has made it difficult. We've made some headroads in Germany when we had our European League. And but part of that's because we had American troops there for so many years and they understood the game. But it's going to be interesting to see, but it's going to be more difficult for football to be the international sport that soccer is, or basketball, or baseball.
All right, that's going to do it for our sports business panel. How about a hand for our panelists, Drayton McLean, Tim Nowicki, Clyde Drexler, and Mr. Bob McNair. Outstanding, gentlemen. And now let's bring aboard Jeff Mosley, President and CEO of GHP.
And again, thank you, Mark. Let's give Mark a round of applause for emceeing this. Mark, thank you. And Jamie Roots, we want to say thanks to you for helping put all this together. And if I may also say, Silver Eagle Distributors, Northwestern Mutual Financial, PFK, Jones Lang LaSalle, we love you. Thank you for your sponsorship today of this luncheon. And Chairman Oxford wanted me to close with this thought, and that is, this coming Saturday, we are celebrating World Trade at the Hotel Zaza. And if you want to know more details about that, we have professionals here. We'd love to chat with you about the 2010 World Trade Soiree and the Golf Classic coming up September 27th. We know there's a few golfers in the room. And lastly, if you're not a member of the partnership, we'd love to talk to you about that as well. God bless you. Go and make it a great day.
Who wants a photo? One picture.